All right, Doc G here. Welcome to Quality Management, the fourth iteration in the Quality Management series. This will be the last slideshow. And so I am going to talk about the 14 principles by Crosby, and just talk about, from my own experience, how I believe those are relevant to today. Some of them are self-explanatory, some of them probably not, and some of them I think that at first glance they seem like they make sense, but there's an even deeper level of meaning to those, at least in my humble opinion. So we're going to go through Crosby's 14 principles for creating quality, and we'll just go through those one at a time and talk about those and how they relate to quality management. We'll also do a few linkages back to W. Edwards Deming. And so, all right, without further ado, here we go. So again, what really is quality, and the characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. And we're most most concerned with the stated needs, though implied needs are also something that we need to be aware of. But realistically, when we're making something for somebody, they give us a list of requirements. All right, so the very first one is the management commitment to quality improvement. And so, at first glance, it seems like, well, yeah, okay, so the management's got to be behind this whole quality improvement thing. But what does that really mean? What does that mean for you as a potential leadership management personnel once you graduate and you move on into a career? So here are just some of the things that, when I look at this and I start thinking about it, things that come to mind. And this is not all encompassing, but hopefully this helps flesh out a little bit so that you can kind of get a better idea of what it really means. And so, for first and foremost, let me tie this in with W. Edwards Deming, and he talks about the unified vision, and so this falls right in line with that. All right, so management's willing to learn, train, monitor continually. This is a lot of times people look at quality control as hey, we step in every now and then, and we do some measurements, and we make some reports, and then we move on. Well, it's not that. Quality management has to be an ongoing process. It has to be a continual process. And as a manager, as a leader, you've got to be driving that train. And so you have to be committed to it. And, we're going to talk about all the different ways that management is committed to it, and how we can get employees on the train as well. All right. So, one-time learning doesn't last. And so, I've seen this in many places that I've seen. You get an initial briefing on quality control, and then, they never really talk about it again. You've got, fast food industry would be one that I can think of. In my early days, I managed a Burger King restaurant, Well, before becoming a manager there, I was an employee. And so, I was a fry guy. I worked on the sandwich construction line, did stocking. I did it all. And so, I remember that, I got an initial discussion of quality and what it is, and then would never touch it again. All right. And so that's something that we as managers, as leaders, we have to understand that, an employee does have to get an initial orientation to the company's quality management program. One time doesn't cut it. We have to do this always, and it has to become a way of life. And so continually promoting quality conformance, and so that needs to be everybody in there, from the janitors to the delivery drivers to wherever. All right, everybody has to be committed to quality, and everybody has to be seeking to make a quality product. All right, and you might say, well, what does the janitor have to do that? Well, the janitor may not have any direct impact on the production of whatever part it is that you're making. However, by them doing their jobs effectively, all right, it makes other people able to do their jobs effectively. And so, there's that domino effect of one thing leading to another. All right, and if you doubt that, then take away the janitors from your building for a week and then tell me how it is. All right, and so we're doing the pandemic thing right here now at Taylor University, and so in the 2 weeks that we've been doing this without students, I have seen the cleaning folks one time. And so I normally take out my own trash from the lab, and but I ran out of trash bags the first day that they were gone. And so just actually yesterday, I finally actually did see a cleaning person and said, hey, I need some trash bags. But trash was literally piling up out in the common areas, and there's nobody taking it out. And so there's nobody cleaning. The restrooms were down. Actually, the restrooms were getting kind of nasty. And so, if you think that everybody doesn't have a part to play in creating a quality environment, then you're wrong. All right. So we also need to be seeking new ways of thinking, and we'll talk a little bit about professional development, professional growth. But we always need to be willing to listen to a different train of thought. And we need to seek different thoughts. We need to seek different ways of thinking, and if we are seeking those and actually listening to that input and giving credence to what's being said and not just giving it lip service, there's a lot we can learn. All right, and I'm just telling you that it's the people that are down in the trenches are the ones who really understand what it is that happens within your company. And we might think that as leaders and managers that, we are the pulse of the company, and that's not true. We're the visible pulse, but the people who actually make the product, those are the ones who see what's going on. They're the ones who actually can foresee problems way before they become a problem. And so we need to be able to listen to what they have to say. We need to empower them to be able to come to us and say, hey, there's a problem. All right. And then we also have to realize that there is no one way. And this is the hardest thing, even for me as a leader, is that when I give somebody a task to do, I try not to give directions on how I want that task done. Because, I want that person to do it in the way that makes sense for them. And there are a few occasions where there is a right way to do it, all right, for safety reasons or whatever. But generally speaking, allow people to solve a problem on their own and allow them to develop their own resources and their own tools. All right, but you have to empower them to do that because it takes time and it takes resources for them to do that. But there is no one way, and again, it's very, very difficult sometimes. When you give somebody a task to do and they start off and they do something completely opposite of what you might do, and you're just like, oh, but you really had to bite your tongue and let them run with it and let them do their thing. And you might be very surprised at what they come up with, even though they took a way different route than what you had done. All right, moving on. All right, the quality improvement team with representatives from each department or function or division, and hopefully from all echelons, from the people on the floor all the way up into the glass-ceilinged offices, right? So what do we do with this team? So we form a team, right? Well, there's nothing more dangerous than a team that's been formed and given no direction on what we want them to do, because what they're going to wind up doing is they're going to self-generate, and ideally we want them to be self-generated, but we have to give them some initial guidance. And so we have to select the people, and we need to be cautious in who we select. We want people that are team players. If you have somebody who's not a team player, all right, it really can throw a monkey wrench into the works of your team. All right, so we want people who get along with others. We want people who are willing to listen to others, and we want people who can use some common sense. All right, and you know, when you start looking at all those, the list of people that we might be able to select for that starts dropping rather dramatically. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but a lot of people have problems doing all three of those, especially at the same time. All right. So once we select that team, and again, you know, we're looking for quality people. And when I say quality, I mean we're looking for people who meet those qualities that I just talked about. And so now we've got to train them. You know, we've got to give them some initial guidance, and we have to give them some training on what they should be doing. All right, and how they can improve the company bottom line through making efficiencies, spotting areas that could use some trimming and some streamlining. All right. One of the things that I've seen more than once is that, you know, a leadership team is developed, and a quality improvement team is developed, not a leadership team, is developed, and then nobody listens to them. You know, they make recommendations and they get filed, and nobody ever acts on them. Nobody ever really looks at it and says, you know, oh, well, maybe we should do what our team has outlined for us that they think are good recommendations. All right, and again, you know, that's just counterintuitive that they would not take advantage of this, but it does happen, and it happens more frequently than you would think. All right, I already talked about must give guidance to the team on goals and etc. And again, ideally, you know, once the team is up and they've done their initial work, you know, they should be able to self-generate on direction and, you know, give feedback on where they think they should go and where their focus should be. And, you know, again, management needs to listen to the recommendations of this team, and it needs to provide resources for the team, and you know, then it needs to actually act on those recommendations. All right, so this one you got to read that a few different times here. Quality measurement to determine the status of quality throughout the company. What does that really mean? Quality measurement to determine the status of quality throughout the company. And actually, when I started to do this, when I sat down and created the PowerPoint for this, I had to read this like 4 or 5 times, and I spent probably about 15 minutes really thinking about this one, because it took me a minute to really absorb what they were trying to say. All right, and so quality measurement to determine the status of quality throughout the company. What they're really looking at is, for every department, every function within our company, every level, every echelon, from, again, you know, from supplier on up to delivery to management, the whole 9 yards, we have to have measurement tools to determine where we are creating quality and where we may be falling short. All right, and so that's really the gist of this, is that the production line is not the only place that we have to have quality measurement and quality management. All right, so we have to develop tools for every department, every level. And so, you know, even in bookkeeping, accounting, accounts receivable, shipping, all the way, we have to develop measurement tools. And those measurement tools are going to be different for every single place. All right, so you can already imagine that this is really huge, to think that, you know, we have to develop measurement tools for every single department within our company. All right, and so, you know, even in some of those departments, you know, there may be different functionalities within that department, and so there'll be different measurement tools for each one of those. So as you can see, this is really quite a large undertaking. And again, you know, if we start doing this from the very start, from the get-go, the cost is not all that much per item on a production cycle. But to start implementing this it's very, very time intensive, excuse me, and also it requires a tremendous amount of resources. All right, so for each of those, we also must create training, and training must be conducted for each of those. All right, so a lot of stuff must go on. All right, so has to be records kept. All right, so it does no good if we're conducting training and conducting measurement of quality if we don't keep records of it. All right, we have to keep records of it. And then we also, just because we have a record, that doesn't mean that we're actually doing something. We must do something with that, right? So the data must be reviewed, and we have to look for, where are the trends that's showing that we're either not meeting our quality objectives, or we have a trend that shows that we're heading in a negative direction. Well, those have to trigger a response, and we have to then develop a plan on how we're going to address those issues. All right. So again, I really spent quite a bit of time just on this one thing, trying to think about it in its entirety, and I don't think that I've really captured it all here. This is just a first blush at it, and if you think about the amount of time and resources that goes into each one of these, it really is quite large. All right, moving on. Determine the cost of quality to discover where action to correct a defect will result in greater profitability. All right, and so, basically what we're talking about here is just, looking at the cost-benefit ratio of, so we found this one area where we could streamline production, or we could cut a little bit of waste. But is it cost-effective to do that? Again, because it costs money to make changes, and as we talked about, I think in our last lecture period, when we're in that full production cycle, it's exponentially more expensive, a lot more expensive. All right, and so we have to look at, is it going to be beneficial for us to do this? Is it something that we must do, or is it something that we should do? And then we also want to look at, are there other ways that we could achieve the same result and with a better cost-benefit ratio? All right, that's what they're talking about. All right, let's move on. All right, quality awareness of all employees about the cost of defects to the company. This is really huge, and again, this ties right back into that unified vision that W. Edwards Deming talked about. All right, and so we had to have periodic training for all employees. All right, so when they initially start, they need to have some training on, what is quality for our company, and what is quality for the area that they're going to be working in. All right, how to recognize that we're not achieving that quality index, right? And then how to make on-the-spot corrections, and then how to make suggestions for long-term improvements. Because again, the people who are actually down in the trenches working, creating the product for us or providing the services for us, are the ones who are really going to see the nuts and the bolts of how this works, and they are most likely going to be the ones who have the recommendations that can have huge potential for savings and streamlining of our processes. All right, so we have to train them on this initially, and then we also have to do training periodically, because again, if somebody learns a skill set and then they don't use it, that skill set goes away. An example would be, say, CPR. All right, so most people probably have taken a CPR course at some point in time in their lives, and the research shows that the average person will take a CPR course, and then within 6 months they've essentially forgotten about 80% of the content. All right, and so if we think about that in terms of the zero defect policy, well, shoot, we're at 80% that we've lost just within this training skill set. Okay, so put that into perspective. All right, so we have to have periodic training, and we'll talk about this again here in a few more slides. All right, But employees must also recognize how even a small on-the-spot correction on the line results in saved money, all right? Or the opposite of that, failing to recognize an error and not make a correction, how that can result in a cost to the company and how that can get multiplied as we go. All right. Corrective action should become a habit. And again, as I said in the very opening, that the whole quality management thing becomes a way of life. It becomes the mantra of every employee there. That's what we need. We want employees to always be thinking about, how can I make this better? What can I do to make this process more efficient? And how can I make this better? All right. Already talked about the first one. All right, and it must be continually championed by management. And a few slides down, we'll talk about some of those things. And again, as I said, it must become the everyday fact of life that employees will take corrective action. And so, got kind of a story on this, a little thing that I like to think of. And so, if you've ever walked out of a building and they've got a little side yard or whatever, and it's just completely covered with litter, and I'm sure that we've all seen that at some point in time. Now let's roll back time to the time when they actually opened that building and there was nothing in that courtyard, right? And it was just clean and it was grass and whatever. All right. So how did we go from having a clean, fresh courtyard to one that's covered in trash and debris? Well, very, very simply. All right. For example, if employees each came out and they saw a wrapper that had blown in from the street or that somebody had dropped, and they picked it up and they threw it away in a trash can, if each employee did that, all right, what would the net result be? Is that the courtyard would never achieve that littered state. All right. And so we want to think about that in the context of our manufacturing environment and really every department, every echelon within our company. And so little actions have a cumulative effect, and the lack of little actions has a cumulative effect, just like the littered courtyard. So if everybody is, and again, are there going to be lapses? Absolutely. Nobody's perfect. And so, but if each employee has that thought that they're going to take corrective action, and we'll say that 10% fail on any given day, there's still 90% of the employees that are walking behind that are picking up the mess that the other 10% are missing. All right, so the cumulative effect of that is huge, absolutely huge. All right, establish an ad hoc committee for the Zero Defects program to communicate that everyone should be doing things right the first time. All right, this is really kind of a reiteration of the quality improvement team. And so a lot of times this is a branch of or a close related to the quality improvement team. All right, and again, it's working to always communicate to employees that, we are concerned about quality management and that it's everybody's job. And again, we'll talk about some ways that we can encourage our employees to jump on the quality management train. Shortest slide yet. Woohoo! All right, supervisor training on the 14 steps. And I just got one bullet here, but really, really important. All right, so we train all of our employees, right, on our quality management program, how to recognize it, how to make on-the-spot corrections, how to make long-term or suggestions for long-term improvement, so forth and so on, right? Well, we've got to have our supervisors trained on this as well. And so they not only have to be familiar with the layperson level of this, but they also have to be able to manage it. And so we have to make sure that our supervisors and managers are also trained on this, and so they're going to have another level of training too. All right, because again, they're going to be the champions of this, as we talked about a few slides back. You know, our supervisors must be the champions of our quality management program. All right, and so very, very important. All right, so they're going to have to be trained periodically. We need to expose them to new ideas. All right, professional development, professional learning, structured learning, and you know, we have to encourage our supervisors to be the champions of this as well. And so if our supervisors are champions of this and we're encouraging our employees to be champions of this, you know, again, not everybody's going to be with the program. You're always going to have some people who are outliers. I mean, that's just a fact of life, unfortunately. But if we've got 90% of the people who are championing the program and who are all aboard the quality management train, all right, then for those few that do miss out on it, the rest of them pick up the slack for the most part. All right, Zero Defects Day, and so a lot of times they'll do this on, you know, so they might hire a new batch of employees, and so, you know, good time to do a Zero Defects Day. All right, a lot of times that this is a full day, but not always. All right, but you know, this needs to be a periodic thing, and so a lot of companies will do this biannually or even quarterly, and some yearly. All right. Some of them do a full day program, you know, where they do little breakout seminars on different topics within quality management, have different speakers. And again, you know, the goal is, again, to communicate the quality management program and that everybody is a part of it, to reinforce to the employees that, you know, they matter and that their contributions to the quality management program are very, very vital. It's also kind of a refresher for the supervisors. A lot of times the supervisors are the ones who are putting this on and setting it all up. But really, really important, you know, that this is a periodic thing. All right. So Advanced Cabinet Systems is one of the places that we typically will take the SYS 101 students and the COS 102 students to, and so they had, and they're a little different than most other companies in that they have a quality management meeting at the beginning of every shift, and they devote about 10 to 15 minutes before each shift starts, and they discuss trends, goals, etc. So that everybody's tracking, and so they can see where they're at, and again, they can see that, you know, maybe production goals for that week are a little bit behind, you know, and so by having this, again, they're addressing the trends and they're setting goals for the workforce to actually move forward and be productive, and again, keep this quality management foremost in their mind. All right, and so we just talked about goal setting. All right, so, you know, typically you want to have goals that are hierarchical. All right, and so we want to have overarching goals for the company. You know, what are our quality management objectives? What are our goals? And, you know, typically you'll have, he talks about 30, 60, and 90-day goals, but really from the company perspective, you're going to have those short-term goals, 30, 60, and 90. You're also going to have more long-term goals. You know, where are we going to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? You know, you really need to have those. All right. So then we're going to break down from those company goals into department level goals. And so the department level goals are going to be much more specific to the departments, each department. All right. And they directly support what the overall overarching company goals are. Right. All right. So, you know, if the company goal is to have, we'll say, a 10% defect rate, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there, or a 1% defect rate. All right. So every department within there, you know, they're going to reflect that 1% defect rate or less. All right. And then they're also going to break out some goals on how they're going to even trim that further, and how they're going to contribute to that. So then within each department, we're going to have a further breakdown, a further delineation of, employee. Well, you even have shift goals and employee goals. I mean, you can really break this down into a very detailed hierarchical thing, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. But so understand that, each employee goal, each shift goal, again, supports department goals, which then supports the overarching company goals. And so we have to set the goals, and we also have to track how we're doing. How are we doing on these goals, and keeping track of where we're at. And then if we're not making the mark, then we need to have some guidance come down on how we're going to adjust to make those. Because it's not just enough to set a goal. A goal that's set means nothing. All right, if we're not tracking our progress through that, and then making on-the-spot corrections to achieve those goals. All right, because again, a goal that's set without tracking is completely useless. It doesn't do anybody any good. It looks good on paper, but it doesn't do anything for us. All right, remove the causes of errors. All right, so we've got these goals, and we're tracking them, and we're finding out that hey, we're finding some sources of errors, right? And so all the previous slides talk about different ways that we're doing this. Well, so we're spending a lot of money. We're spending a lot of time. We're spending a lot of money. We're spending a lot of resources on identifying these areas that need help. All right, and so now that we've identified, we've got to take that information and take action. All right, we have to take action. If you don't take action, then you've just wasted all that time, effort, and money. And it's not uncommon for companies to really kind of fall down at this. They do all this tracking of things, but then when it comes time to say, okay, what do we do to adjust this, sometimes they miss the boat. And when I say many, that's probably a misnomer. I probably shouldn't have said many, but some. So you got to have the complete package, because we're spending all this time and effort to identify causes of errors or inefficiencies and ways to streamline. Well, we have to take corrective action to do that. And by taking corrective action, we're doing what? We're allocating time and resources and people to address those. All right, so we have to do that. All right, let's see where we're at here. All right, so here we're talking about some different ways that we can bring our employees on board and make sure that they're fully involved with this and they're excited about what they're doing. All right, so recognize those who meet their goals or perform outstanding acts with a non-financial prize or reward. All right, and so what they're saying is, instead of giving them a bonus, we're going to do something for the employee that makes them feel valued, and it's a little bit of a reward for maybe stepping outside of the norm and providing something that is beneficial for the company. All right, so just some common things that you'll see, even in a fast food restaurant, they got the employee of the month. All right, well, it's a non-financial thing, but it does a lot for employee morale and having employees actually, getting with the concept of this whole quality management. All right, I've been involved with a couple different companies that they track employee progress in acts above and beyond throughout the work year, and maybe quarterly or whatever, they'll make awards, all right, for different things. But they also would have a prize catalog, and so they can contract with companies that do this, and so each employee gets a little prize catalog at the start of the season, whatever. All right, and employees can accrue points. All right, and so important that just that points are achievable and attainable, and so that everybody can at least earn something. And so a lot of times their points are awarded for safety, points are awarded for attendance. You get 5 points for every week where you haven't missed a day, whatever. Points for making approved recommendations, so forth and so on. And so that the more things that the employees are doing that benefits the company and is moving things in a positive direction, they get more points. And so the more points that they accrue, the nicer the prizes they can get with these. And I really love this concept. It's kind of expensive to do, but you know, if you're a multi-million-dollar company, really you're not spending a lot of money on this, you know, when you look at the overall picture of it. And you want to talk about getting employees involved, the fact that they can win prizes, you know, for just doing their job. All right. And so it's a win-win for everybody. Employees are happy, you know, they get to earn some cool stuff. The company's happy because they're spending just a little bit of money on this, and they're getting a huge return on their investment as far as, you know, people trying to do the right thing and people trying to go above and beyond so they can earn these points for this. All right. So just something to think about. All right. Like I said, I've been involved with a couple of these, and I can't think of a one where the employees weren't excited about the possibility of earning some of these prizes just for doing their job. You know. All right. Enough said. Moving on. All right. I guess that was it. All right. So anyhow, we're about 36 minutes into this. I hope that this was useful for you. And again, this is the last set of slides in the quality management series. I'll talk next about requirements, writing good requirements, and then we'll also have an updated homework assignment, and after we've gone through the writing good requirements. Anyhow, it's Thursday, April 9th. Tomorrow is Good Friday. I hope that everybody has a blessed weekend, and I will talk to you all next week. Talk to you out.